Hey everyone, whether you're prepping for emergencies, stocking up on a tight budget, or just want peace of mind in these uncertain times, today's video is for you. So let's get into it. Hey everyone, it's going Veggies Backyard Prepper, and today we're counting down the top 15 Prepper Pantry food items that are budget friendly, easy to store, and long lasting. This makes them perfect for any urban or suburban prepper pantry. And then after the list, we're going to go over a few honorable mentions that didn't quite make the list, and explain why they would be some good additions to your budget prepper pantry. Okay, so for this list, one thing I do want to point out is that everything I'm going to show you today is priced at $10 or less. Nothing on this list, or no individual item on this list is going to be over $10, which is, that's why we're saying budget friendly. So to start the list, we're going to go into number 15, and that is going to be instant potatoes. Now, instant potatoes, these are very cheap. This box right here, I think was like $1.37 or something like that for this box, and it has 12 servings for this little box. I think the biggest box I saw was right around like $5. Basically, it's a really good thing to have in your prepper pantry. We're going to be taking this, putting it and storing it in Mylar. But I wanted to show everything to you today in its original packaging before we store it, so that way you're not just looking at Mylar bag after Mylar bag and not actually knowing what we're talking about. The good thing about the instant potatoes, they're a really cheap and easy comfort food. I mean, who doesn't love mashed potatoes? And all you need to prepare it is water. Boil up some water, follow the instructions. A little tip that I'll give you guys is that when you do put these types of things into Mylar bags, take and cut the back of the box off and stick it in the bag with the product. So that way then you have the preparation instructions with the product, so makes it much easier. The other nice thing about this, you can dress it up with some powdered milk, spices, like dried chives, onion, things like that. And you can also pair it with like canned stews, canned meats, and things like that for a good hearty little meal that will get you through your day. So number 15, instant potatoes. Okay, so number 14, and just so you guys know, everything I'm showing in this video today is stuff right out of our own pantry. We're actually we have a finished garage, which is kept cool by the central air, so don't have to worry too much about the heat. Today it's going to be, I believe, 110 here in Vegas. So, but number 14 is going to be canned soups, stews, chili, things like that. And these are some of the ones from out of our pantry. The really nice thing about these is it's a complete meal in a can. You don't have to really add anything. If you don't want to, you can just eat it right out of the can. If you're in a grid down situation, some of them have pop tops on them, and you just pop it and you can put it right on like a little camp stove or something, heat it right in the can if you want, or you can also eat it cold. Another nice thing too is on some of these, what's like the basic condensed chicken noodle, You can add like barley into it, just soak it so that way it's soft. Or you can add rice and things like that. Another good one, the tomato soup. You can cook up some lentils, throw that in there with the tomato soup, a little bit of basil, and boom, you've got your proteins, vitamin C, all that there. And all of these, not a single one of these, I believe, was like over $5. I think this actually, the chili might have been like $6. But one thing I do have to say though is keep an eye out, because a lot of times the soups, like this mushroom soup here, cream of mushroom soup, it says condensed, so you will have to add water. The others, like the Campbell's Chunky or the Progressos and things like that, they are not condensed, so you can eat them straight as they are without having to add any water. It's a very simple and easy thing that you can stock up on and store. When you go to the grocery store, just grab a couple extra, 1 or 2 extra, and put them aside. If you eat one, go to the store, buy 2 more. That's the whole thing about, slowly building up your prepper pantry. You don't have to do it and go out and spend thousands of dollars all at once. Just every time you go to the store, when you're rotating through, that's an important thing. You want to rotate what you have. Always check the best by dates. A lot of times they're printed on the bottom of the can. And, just rotate through your stock, eat the oldest ones first. And remember, a best by date is not an expiration date. It's just, that's when it's at, the peak of, flavor, texture, all that kind of stuff. So, number 14, canned soups, stews, chilies, and we're gonna go on to the next. Okay, so number 13 is tea and coffee. Now, here in our house, we're not really big on like the hot teas and stuff. We do have like chamomile teas, peppermint teas, and things like that for, the traditional medicinals type of thing. But that's not something that we store a ton of. Mainly because, we grow chamomile and peppermint in our garden. But, so we just pick it fresh and make the teas that way. But iced tea. You can't tell me y'all don't like sweet tea. So, the big thing with the tea bags, you gotta rotate them. If there's stuff that if you want to store them, that's good, but you're going to want to put them in either Mylar with an oxygen absorber, or you're going to want to vacuum seal them with an oxygen absorber, and then keep them in a cool, dark, dry place. And that will give you the longest shelf life, but I wouldn't really recommend storing it for more than a year. With the coffee, in a container like this, unopened, you get probably about 6 to 8 months. If you transfer it from this into Mylar, then you could probably get a year and a half. Because coffee is has a lot of oils in it, and in time they can go rancid. So you definitely want to keep it in a cool place. Preferably like inside, in a closet, under the bed, something like that, where the temperature is not going to be getting above like 80 degrees. Otherwise it can get kind of rancid tasting and bitter. But for the pepper pantry, this jug is probably the most expensive thing on here. We just pulled this out of our pantry. This right here is about 2 weeks worth of coffee for all of us here. There's 9 of us here. And this is like actually $16. So this was kind of, I guess, a little fib. We have one item that's over 10. But the tea bags, these aren't that expensive. I think this was like $7 or $8. And it's 24 tea bags that are sized to make a gallon of sweet tea. And if you don't know how to make sweet tea, I don't know what to tell you. Put the bag in water in the glass pitcher, stick it out in the sun, and let it brew. Bring it in, throw some ice in, throw some sugar in, you got yourself sweet tea. These are two really, really good, just kind of morale boosters. You know, nutritionally, I mean, it's not really that much for you. It gives you a little energy boost from the caffeine and all. But, you know, if, you know, there's just an emergency thing, you know, things are going crazy, and just having that nice hot cup of coffee or a nice cold glass of sweet tea can do wonders for, you know, your group's mood. Another mention, something that we actually need to start adding to our stockpiles that we haven't yet, is instant coffee. Basically, instant coffee is just freeze-dried coffee. They brew the coffee, put it in trays, stick it in a freeze dryer. When the cycle's done, it's like a big slab that they break into little chunks and put it in a jar. So with that, if you leave it in the container, leave it sealed, that can last for decades. So number 13, tea and coffee. Alrighty, so for number 12 is salt and spices. Now with this, you've got huge variety, and if you're not sure what spices to get, just look at what you use every day, or like in a month or whatever. That's the main thing. You always want to eat what you use, or scratch that. You want to stock what you use. Sorry, I haven't had nearly enough coffee today. You want to stock what you use. You know, don't just go out and start buying all kinds of random things just because. You know, whether it's on sale or whatever. You know, if you're not a fan of curry, there's no point in having curry powder in your pantry. You know, this is a small example right here on the table of stuff that we use. This actually has come right out of our kitchen pantry. So as you can tell, some of the jars don't have a whole lot left. So we're gonna have to, you know, get some more. But you know, you can get things like fajita mix. You know, we love tacos. We eat a lot of tacos here. Italian seasoning for spaghetti, black pepper, red chili flakes. We like hot foods here. That's why we out in the garden we've got a lot of hot chilies growing. And then salt. Believe it or not, a lot of people I guess don't know this, but there's a lot of different types of salt out there. We typically use sea salt for most of our cooking and stuff. So we have the regular sea salt that's not iodized, and then we have iodized sea salt. And we just kind of go back and forth between the two, just whichever happens to be on sale that day. And then also too, and we like this on like our steaks and pork chops and stuff, you know, like the Himalayan pink salt. And we got this in like a little grinder. I actually used this morning on the fried egg sandwich. It's really good. You know, so a lot of these will have a really long shelf life, but the thing is, you need to keep it away from moisture, humidity, and stuff like that, especially the salts, because you'll end up with a brick, and you're going to have to grind that up. You don't want to go there. The seasonings, you want to keep them in a cool, dark, dry place to kind of preserve their freshness. If you buy in bulk, the typical prepper storage method, Mylar and oxygen absorber. You can take this here, dump it into the Mylar oxygen absorber, heat seal it, You know, you can even, if you got a good vacuum sealer that has a high heat sealer, you can even vacuum seal the Mylar bag. And then, you know, just rotate through so that way it stays fresh. When you use one, go to the store to buy a replacement, buy two. That way then you have one to use, one to put in the pantry. You finish that one, go to the store, buy two, grab your oldest one out of the pantry, and open that. So, I mean, you know what spices are for. For seasoning food. Salt can be used for food preservation. Humans have been preserving food with salt for thousands of years. Curing meats, preserving fish, things like that. So, number 12, salt and spices. Alrighty, so for number 11, we have sugar and honey. Now, nutritionally, there's really not anything here, maybe with the honey, but white granulated sugar, it's not very nutritionally good for you, I guess you could say. It doesn't really have vitamins, or there's like no fat, no cholesterol, no sodium, no protein. It's just pure carbohydrates. But it's a good thing to add to your prepper pantry as a supplement for other things. You can use it in baking, put it in the sweet tea. It's good for a quick little energy boost. Just, be aware that you could, have, energy crash after the sugar gets burned through your system. But it's used in all kinds of things, it never goes bad. Just store it, of course, in Mylar oxygen absorbers. We just got these. We go through a lot of sugar here. Like I said, there's 9 of us, and you imagine, at least 6 of us drink coffee, so 6 people drinking coffee, putting sugar in their coffee. We go through a lot of sugar. The honey, we actually go through a lot of honey too. There's a little local place that has hives, and we buy our honey directly from them because the honeybees are going to like the wildflowers that are local to our area. So it helps with allergies, helps your body adjust and not be so sensitive to different allergens for your area. So we always try to get our honey made locally here in the Las Vegas Valley. The folks that we get this one from, I think they have hives in a couple places in town, and then one up in Mount Charleston, which is just outside of town. Honey also has some medicinal properties. I'm not going to get into that here. Google's a wonderful thing. Otherwise this video would be way too long, and it's going to be a long video as it is. So another thing also too with honey is you can use it in food preservation. Over the centuries, people have used honey to preserve different spices. If you go to a lot of farmers markets, you'll see garlic in honey, and it would seem counterintuitive, but it's interesting. You gotta try it. A little bit of that on some toast, butter and toast. You gotta try it. You'll be pleasantly surprised. So, number 11 is sugar and honey. Alrighty, so number 10 on our list is flour and wheat berries. This is like the staple food for Western civilization. Is wheat. I mean, bread, tortillas, corn tortillas too, but cakes, cupcakes, breads, donuts. So many foods that we as Americans at least use wheat products, namely flour. Now, if stored properly, flour can last you a little while. However, you want to make sure you rotate. rotate, rotate, rotate. That is the biggest thing with all of your prepper pantry items. Flour will go bad. It will go rancid. Now, storing flour, there are a couple steps. You can't just buy it like this, stick it in your pantry, and think you're good. You need to first, after you buy the flour, if you're going to store it for long term, stick it in the freezer for at least 72 hours. What that does is it kills any of the little like weevils and things like that that can have eggs that were on the wheat berries that were made from, made into the flour. We vacuum seal our flour with an oxygen absorber after it's been frozen. We stick it in the freezer for a week, just to be on the safe side. But you can use it, like I said, for making bread, making flour tortillas, baking cakes, biscuits, things like that. Just make sure that you rotate through your stocks. When you put it in the Mylar, vacuum seal, oxygen absorber, all that, make sure you write the date that you sealed it onto the Mylar. And then, for those of you that don't know, you can also go to different stores and get wheat berries, actual wheat. And we have some right here that we already had in Mylar. Now what this looks like, I'm going to have my son, the cameraman, pull some out and bring it up to the camera for you guys. Okay. And apparently we'll have to sweep our kitchen. But it just basically looks like brown rice. But that's not rice, that's wheat. This, when stored properly, can be stored indefinitely. I mean, they found in like Egyptian tombs wheat that was still viable. Not maybe so much for growing, but was still able to be eaten after thousands of years. So, Mylar oxygen absorber, and seal it, and that can be used for a number of things. You can if you have a mill, you can grind it into flour yourself. Another thing you can also do is soak it in water and then put it into a soup, like we showed some of the soups before. If you want to kind of stretch, like let's say a can of chicken noodle soup, you only have one can, you want to stretch it a little bit, that way then 2 people can eat. Get a couple handfuls of wheat berries, soak them in water, drain it, and put that in with the soup, and it'll make that soup far more filling, and you can stretch out, make it for 2 people, a 1 can of soup for 2 people instead of just 1 person. So that's going to be number 10, flour and wheat berries. Alrighty, so moving on with this, number 9 is canned veggies. What can I say? Canned vegetables. A lot of varieties out there, but as always, stock what you eat. In SHTF, that is not the time to be experimenting with new stuff. If you're not going to eat it, don't stock it. You've got a lot of different things. You can go with corn, there's cream corn, and things like that. A good way to figure out how much you're going to need is just look at how many cans you would use in a meal. For just a young couple, 1 can would probably be enough for 1 meal. With us, if we're making corn at a meal, we use like 4 or 5 cans. Okay, I got a whole mess of teenagers here, and they eat and eat and eat. You know, but there's corn, there's bean sprouts. You know, you can even get sliced potatoes. You know, you can get them diced, sliced. There's whole new potatoes. And one of the nice things about these is they're cooked already. You know, you can take the can, you get the whole potatoes or the diced potatoes, and heat them up. You can just put them right into a pot, start heating them up, and mash them up instantly. You have mashed potatoes made right out of potatoes. You know, that way, you know, there's all kinds of things. You can fry these. My wife and I, we eat the sliced ones. We fry them with a little bit of butter and some salt and pepper, and make a great side dish. You know, there's green beans, and then, you know, my family is, you know, got some German ancestry on one side. Sauerkraut. We love our sauerkraut. We have some that we ferment whenever we grow cabbages, but we also get canned sauerkraut just to have some extras, you know, put aside. You know, they'll store for a long time. You know, that's one of the great things about canned goods. You know, people are finding like old canned goods that from like World War II era, from the early Cold War era. And, you know, you see on TikTok and all the other stuff, people finding like the, you know, canned crackers that are, you know, from the 1950s, you know, for the Cold War bunkers. And they crack them open and those things are still good. So, canned vegetables, you know, you want to make sure you rotate, go by the best by dates. A lot of times they're kind of printed funky, so what we do is we'll get a Sharpie and write the best by, you know, just kind of rewrite the best by date on the cans. These ones here we just got from the store, so they haven't gone into the pantry yet. But you know, just make sure, you know, the big point for this one, stock what you eat, make sure you rotate. And one other thing you want to make sure of on these, just check periodically, make sure there's no rust, make sure that the can isn't swelling. If the top is starting to bulge a little bit, you probably want to get rid of it. But other than that, you know, that's going to be it for number 9 for canned veggies. Alrighty, so moving on, number 8 is powdered milk and shelf-stable milk. I'm sure y'all have seen one of the videos we did a couple years ago on the modern pantry shelf-stable milk. Needs no refrigeration. You know, you get these from the dollar store. Well, the $1.25 store now. But one of the important things you want to make sure of whenever you do get these, 2 things. Of course, rotate, 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 and then always, you know, go through them at the dollar store and check the best by dates. You'll want to get the ones that have the farthest out best by dates. So when you use one, next time you're at the dollar store, buy 2. These things, you get up to about a year of shelf life. So if you keep rotating, and we use these in our coffee instead of really a lot of times the liquid creamers. So, you know, if you look at our video that we did on this, which I will put a card for that right here. You know, we go in and do an actual taste test in comparison from this to regular gallon jug of store-bought cold milk. Now, powdered milk. We just got this one from the store. So it hasn't gotten into the Mylar yet. Like I said, I wanted to make sure you guys were actually seeing the packaging and not just looking at a bunch of Mylar bags. That could get kind of boring. Powdered milk, if you store it properly, you could get a couple years out of it. You want to put it in Mylar, you want to put oxygen absorbers in it, and you want to try to vacuum seal it if at all possible. Okay, and then like I said with like the the instant potatoes. On the back, you've got your instructions. So after you put it in the Mylar, you can cut this off and like tape it to the outside of the Mylar, or stick it down in the bag. That's fine too. Just make sure that it's sanitary. You know, just not have dust or any weird little critters or anything on it. I would tape it to the outside, in all honesty. But that way then you've got your instructions so you know how to make it. You know, you're not going to remember everything. Nobody does. So, powdered milk, you can, it's very versatile. You can use it in baking. You can use this in place of powdered creamer. You know, all kinds of things you can do. Just turn, you know, use it as its intended purpose. Mix it with water, make milk. The one, like I said, the one thing you want to make sure of though is rotating, because you don't get like the, you know, how the freeze-dried foods or some even canned goods, the long shelf life, year, maybe 2. But if you build up a good stockpile, rotate consistently, and you stay on top of it, you'll, you know, in any minor emergency, civil unrest, anything like that, lockdown, whatever, you have milk and don't have to go to the store. So, you know, number 8, powdered milk and shelf-stable milk. Alrighty, so number 7 is going to be canned tomatoes, tomato paste, tomato sauce, things like that. And this also will include like spaghetti sauces and stuff like that. I didn't put like diced tomatoes in with the veggies because those are more of like a side dish type item, and this is more of something you would, like a recipe ingredient. When we make our spaghetti sauce, we usually throw in a couple cans of diced tomatoes, or if we have tomatoes in the, growing in the garden, we'll pick the tomatoes, dice them, and put those in our sauce then. Regular tomato sauce, tomato paste, things like that. You know, good things to have because they are like a supplemental ingredient for many dishes. If you have a like a freeze-dried meal that you're eating and you just kind of want to, you know, liven it up a little bit, throw some diced tomatoes in after you rehydrate it and warm it up or whatever. Throw those diced tomatoes in. You know, they're very versatile. Now these will also store for a long time, but as always, you want to always check your cans, make sure there's no swelling. You know, always check your best by dates, and you know, you want to look for, especially with like the acidic foods like tomatoes, you want to check for like any kind of like rust or anything on the cans, anything that's like kind of like a damage to the can, or that could signify that something has gotten into the inside the can that would make then eating it harmful. Okay, so number 7, canned tomatoes, tomato sauce, tomato paste. Alrighty, so number 6, moving on down the line here, we've got pasta. Pasta is like one of the best prepper foods in that it is inexpensive. You can buy it in bulk, and it's very, very easy to store, and it will, with a few exceptions, which we'll go over here in a minute, it will store for a very long time if stored properly. You know, you've got elbow macaroni, spaghetti, jumbo shells, egg noodles, and we've even got rice noodles for like a stir fry or whatever. These are the ones out of our everyday use pantry, so they're not going to be in any kind of airtight container in Mylar, because we, you know, use them. We actually used some of these last night. But of course, always you want to store them airtight container, preferably Mylar. Um, you know, the spaghetti noodles probably be a little bit trickier to store in Mylar. So you can get airtight container with oxygen absorbers. Just take this box, put it in, say, a 5-gallon, a bunch of them in a 5-gallon bucket, drop an oxygen absorber in, put the lid on. Boom. Of course, you want to keep them in a cool, dry place. You don't want them to be around humidity, moisture, or anything like that. For storage though, one thing that does not store very well are going to be egg noodles. And that's because of just how they're made. Egg noodles, if you look at the ingredients, it's wheat, wheat flour, egg whites, and a couple other things. Because it has egg whites used in the manufacture of the noodle, that cuts the storage time down significantly. So for long-term storage, egg noodles would not be a good idea. But just for your everyday pantry, if you're going to eat them within a couple months, they're fine. But don't think you're going to be able to store egg noodles for any significant period of time. Jumbo shells, elbow, spaghetti, fettuccine, penne pasta, stuff like that. You put them in Mylar with an oxygen absorber, they'll store for a long time. Just make sure that, of course, rotate. The reason why you want them to be in an airtight container is these are a favorite target of pests. Mice, bugs, all love to munch on noodles. So make sure it's in something that is going to keep the pests out. We've got all of our pasta for our long-term storage in 5-gallon buckets with a lid. Of course, oxygen absorber. We use Gamma Seal lids, the ones with the screw-on lids. That helps get that tight seal to keep the air out. Okay, so that's going to be number 6 for pasta. Alrighty, so for number 5, we've got canned meat. Canned meat, there's way more out there than just Spam, guys, or sardines. Just as a small example, let me adjust in my chair here. This little bench is kind of getting to me. Typical luncheon meat, aka Spam. That's like the stereotypical prepper meat. I mean, look at Fallout. They were eating Spam with everything. But there's little mini sausages. These are kind of like a Vienna sausage in a can. We also have some that they didn't bring out here that's like an actual ground sausage that you can cut into patties that we have in a can about the same size. Chicken, canned chicken. This is a staple in our house. We use a lot of canned chicken. This stuff is great. It has some water in there, so you pop open the can, drain the water. We drain it usually into a bowl and put it with our animals, like on our animals' food for our dog and our cats. They love it. But you can take this, put it into a bowl, put a little mayo in, mix it up, and you've got a chicken salad sandwich. You can also take this, fry it, put it on, in a pan, heat it up, throw a little fajita seasoning on there, some taco seasoning, a little cilantro, whatever, and you've got chicken tacos. So, very versatile. This one here, diced ham, we actually did a little video short on this a while back, I think a couple weeks ago. It's diced ham. Basically, consistency wise, it's similar to the Spam type, but however, let's see here. This one here has 600 milligrams of sodium per serving, and this has almost 800 milligrams of sodium per serving. So it's got less sodium, so it doesn't have that like really salty taste that Spam does. but it does have that kind of Spam consistency. So if you're using it like in an omelet or want to use it like in an omelet, or you know, making some mac and cheese, want to throw some cubed ham in it, it works really good. But just beware, it's not going to be the same as if you took a ham slice and cubed it up. Okay. And then another good one, it's roast beef. Canned roast beef. Now you'll see that there will be some, it says it's in beef broth, others will be in gravy. The ones that we get both, but the ones like in beef broth, what we'll do is we'll take this, and when we're making like regular beef tacos, we'll take this and just pop it open and dump it liquid and all right in with the meat, the ground beef, and mix it up, and throw in a little bit of street taco seasoning. It's really good. You know, of course, rotate. Always use your oldest ones first. You know, and just there's a lot of variety out there in the canned meat department. And they're also not very expensive. If you don't get like the big name brand ones, you know, this was probably, I think, $2.50. This here was like $1.50. Yeah, you know, it's a little bit pricier than, you know, like this is, you know, enough for like 2 people for an omelet. You know, it's a little more expensive than if you were just go and get like a ham slice, if you're going by volume of meat. But if you take that same ham slice and stick it in a baggie and throw it on the shelf, it's not going to last very long. Stick it in the fridge, you know, it can last you a little longer. This will last you probably a couple, you know, several years. So yeah, you're paying a few pennies more per serving, but you're getting more value because you're able to store it and stockpile it. So I actually had somebody make a comment about that on one of my videos a while back. So that's going to be number 5 there for canned meats. Okay, so moving on, we've got number 4, peanut butter. Peanut butter, I mean, there's been a little bit of a spat online about, you know, types of peanut butter and all that there. Yeah, for your everyday pantry that you use all the time, the natural peanut butter, the one with, you have to stir the oil back into it or whatever, you know, that one's better for you. Yeah, okay. But let me put, you know, in a SHTF type situation, I don't think you're gonna care. Regular peanut butter, there's creamy peanut butter, chunky peanut butter, all kinds of different peanut butters out there. We just get the plain creamy peanut butter. That's what we use on a regular basis. It's got a very long-term storage, so if you keep it in the jar in a cool, dry place, you know, don't put it out in, like, you know, where the sun's gonna hit it, you know. Food storage, you know, it's self-explanatory, you know. Cool, dry place, keep it on, you know, don't open it, don't pop the seal, you know, it'll store for, you know, 9 months, maybe a year. So just make sure you rotate through. I'd actually bought this little one just for the video, but you know, you can also get a bigger size. This is the one we use. We'll go through one of these in like a week or 2. You know, I've got full squad, you know, squad size battalion of teenagers here. And we go through peanut butter. I think I just bought this like a week or 2 ago. But it's very calorie and nutrient dense. The serving size for peanut butter is literally just 2 tablespoons. And that's, you know, that gives you like 190 calories, 14 grams of fat. It, you know, gives you 7 grams of protein. And, you know, it's versatile. You can put it on crackers, you can put it on, you know, make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Especially, you know, if you're, you know, doing your own canning and doing your own preserving stuff. You know, we've got blackberry and blueberry jam that we made in our pantry, in canned in mason jars. And the other nice thing about peanut butter, it's a comfort food. Especially if you've got kids. If things are kind of going crazy or whatever, make the kid a peanut butter sandwich. It kind of helps keep that sense of normalcy. But it is also, like I said, a very nutrient dense food. And one of the things I'm going to have in the honorable mentions. It's actually one of my favorite things to do for survival food with peanut butter. The survival bars, you probably see these all over the place on Amazon and prepper websites and all that kind of stuff. This one's a 3,600 calorie bar, 9 bricks, so each one is 3-ounce serving. So it's pretty dense, but you take one of these bricks and kind of break it up in a bowl or whatever, drop a dollop of peanut butter in, mix it up. It's actually really good. Or you could just take one of the little squares and put some peanut butter on it. And it's a good little calorie and nutrient dense snack. So of course, rotate. I think that's about all I can really say about peanut butter. I mean, everybody knows what peanut butter is, so that's going to be number 4, peanut butter. Alrighty, so we are getting into the top of our list here. Number 3 is going to be like rolled or old-fashioned oats. These are not the instant quick oats that you see for like a lot of like the oatmeal breakfast type cereal things that you see for kids and all that there. For example, like this is the instant oatmeal. This is not what I'm talking about. Okay, I'm talking about this here, old-fashioned oats. This right here, store it, sealed of course in Mylar oxygen absorber, vacuum seal if possible. You'll get over 10 years storage on it. This here, these guys, you get a couple months. This is not something you can really use for long-term storage. Just all the different, like there's all kinds of added little extra things in there, because there's like the maple brown sugar, which wouldn't be too bad, but it'd be a pain in the butt to like open up all these packets and drop them into a Mylar bag and seal it. Even then, I don't think it would last very long. So we are sticking with the old-fashioned oats. These are a thicker cut, a little bit more hearty, and you can use them in a lot of things. I mean, you can make it as an actual oatmeal with a little bit of milk, honey, add it to a trail mix. You can make no-bake oatmeal cookies with them, with a little bit of sugar and honey. Mix it with some peanut butter for another little snack, peanut butter oatmeal cookies, no-bake. We actually, in addition to using it in recipes, this is a snack we have for our backyard flock. We don't use scratch grains. And we've gone over that in other videos as why we don't do that. But, calorie-wise, a half a cup, so just a small amount, has 160 calories. It has a serving size half a cup. This says 150 calories on this one. Has 5 grams protein, a little bit of iron, a little bit of potassium, but it's got a lot of carbohydrates and a lot of fiber. You know, just something to add to your diet, kind of give you some extra nutrition, and you just kind of balance things out. You know, you're looking for a well-rounded diet in time, you know, in hard times. You know, and also to just trying to keep things more of a sense of normalcy. You know, if things are going crazy out there, you want to try to, especially when you have kids, you want to try to keep things as normal and structured for them as possible. And instead of trying to do long-term storage of the quick oats, you get the rolled oats, keep some cinnamon and brown sugar in, you know, with your spices and sugars and stuff out in the pantry, and you can make up you can easily recreate this using this from stuff that will store 100 times longer. So that's kind of the whole point of the video, is finding, you know, those budget-friendly things that will store for a good period of time. So number 3, old-fashioned or rolled oats. Alrighty, so for this next one, number 2, is dried beans. There's a lot of different varieties of dried beans out there. You've got red beans, kidney beans, black beans, garbanzo beans, pinto beans, lentils. Any of the legumes are part of this category. It's not something we really stock up a whole lot on here, just because for dietary reasons it kind of messes with us a little bit. Only a few legumes, you know, we're okay with, like garbanzo beans, and then lentils. Now lentils are really good because they cook a lot faster than some of the larger beans, especially like the big, you know, kidney beans and stuff. Those things take forever, from, you know, what I've seen and remember as a kid growing up. My mom would make them. These don't take nearly as long. Lentils are a legume. They have, let's see, so for, it says serving size, 1/4 cup, 110 calories, protein 9 grams in a 1/4 cup. So you use, you know, that's a tiny amount, and that's 1/4 cup uncooked. So it's got a lot of fiber, 4 grams of fiber in that little 1/4 cup of lentils. And they're very versatile too. You know, you can mix, you know, beans and rice. You can put, like the lentils, we put them into a tomato soup. That's really good. We also put them in with like stews. We actually made some chicken soup a couple months ago and had lentils in with it. So it's very versatile. Add a little protein to any kind of dish. You know, any of the beans. You know, if you have pinto beans, you can take those, cook them up, make refried beans. You know, they're an excellent source of iron, magnesium, and they have a very long shelf life. I actually just got these at the store because we used some the other day. So these will be going into a Mylar bag with an oxygen absorber here probably after we're done shooting this video. So that's going to be number 2, will be dry beans. Alrighty, so before we get into our number 1, which I'm sure y'all can probably guess what that is, we're going to go over some of the honorable mentions for your short-term pantry, or things that, you know, a lot of preppers will stock up on. First is ramen. This is good for like a quick little meal, you know, give you a full belly. But the reason why I didn't make the list is because it doesn't last very long. You know, it's not really something you can really, I mean, you could probably stick it in Mylar or vacuum seal it or something with an oxygen absorber and the little seasoning pack. But even then, I wouldn't keep this. You can have it, but you're looking about 6 months storage on this tops. As I showed with the peanut butter, the made a survival emergency food rations. These ones didn't make the list because the price of these have gone up. I'm sure if you look around online you can probably find them for inexpensive, but the ones that actually taste halfway decent, you're looking anywhere from 15 to 30 bucks for one of these bricks. Another one is cornmeal. Now this one here is my top mention because cornmeal can be used for a lot of things. It just doesn't have a very long storage life unless you put it in Mylar with an oxygen absorber. But you can use this, make cornbread, corn tortillas. One of the things I like to do is kind of make mix it with a little bit of water and make like a pancake almost, fry that up and put chili over the top of it. That's good. And then bouillon. The bouillon in a jar like this doesn't store very long. You're looking 6 months to a year tops before it starts to kind of get a bit of a rancid taste and smell. So this would be in your everyday use pantry. If you did want to store something a little bit longer term, you probably get 1 to 2 years out of the little bouillon cubes. But these things are a pain in the butt to work with because they usually are they can tend to be hard as a brick, and they don't dissolve very well in water, especially if you stored them for a while. So those are the honorable mentions, and now let's move on to number 1. Alrighty folks, so here we are, number 1. And of course, I'm sure you probably guessed, number 1 is white rice. Now there's many types of rice out there. There's brown rice, all that there. White rice is the quintessential prepper food. One thing you want to make sure of though is that you're getting the long grain enriched rice. If you could get that out of the pantry quick. You don't want to use what my son is bringing. Doesn't really do good for long-term storage. The instant rice. This is kind of more like the rice that we use every day. If we just want to, whip something up quick. We also do have a few bags of regular enriched rice around that are not prepped for long-term storage. Like one of the kids wants to have something at lunch, they get the rice cooker out, put some of the regular enriched rice in, and quick meal. But I do not recommend the instant rice. We did try storing that once, and after about a year we cracked it open, and when we cooked it, the texture was off and just kind of had a funky taste and stuff like that. So regular long grain enriched white rice. And of course you want to store it in Mylar. We've actually have some of ours stored in the Harvest Rate Mylar bags. These are, I think, the half-gallon size, and which is perfect for us because what we can do is we have it portioned. We know how much we cook per meal for all of us, and we put that amount into the smaller bag, seal it so it's heat sealed, and it has oxygen absorber in it, and we've got that stored out in the garage. Now rice is one of the best prepper foods in that you feel full after eating it. It's not going to be something where you eat a bunch of rice, maybe throw a little bit of like the canned roast beef and a little barbecue sauce and mix it all together, have a quick little meal. That was actually one of my favorite MREs when I was in the Marine Corps. But it was pork with rice and barbecue sauce. That was really yummy. But rice, you can look on here. The serving size is a 1/4 cup, 160 calories, 36 grams carbohydrates, and 3 grams of protein. So, one of the other things that makes rice a great prepper food is how cheap it is. This little bag right here, this is 1 pound of rice, and this I think was like 80 cents at the store. You know, if you've got a Costco membership, Sam's Club membership, any of the other big box stores like that, you know, they've got rice in 25-pound bags, 50-pound bags, and I think the Costco that we go to also has rice in like 100-pound bags. And it's not expensive at all. We actually have a couple hundred pounds of rice
Say at least 200.
stored. You know, and it's very versatile. You can use it in all kinds of recipes. You know, you can make Spanish rice, you can do white rice for like Oriental type cuisine. You know, just all kinds of things. And when it's stored properly in the Mylar like this, oxygen absorber, and kept, you know, below like 70 degrees, this will store for 20 plus years. You know, this is one of the best survival foods out there. It does take some water to cook, so you know, you do need to take that into account. But we're talking about foods, not water storage. We'll do water storage and all that there in another video. One of the things I want to do is our bugging in series that we did on the shorts. I want to do a long form video of each, so if that's something you guys like, drop that in the comments. So anyways guys, that is number 1, white rice. Alrighty folks, there you have it. 15 solid budget-friendly foods to start or boost your prepper pantry right now without breaking the bank. Now, let me ask, which of these do you already have in your stockpile? I'm assuming you guys are going to have the beans and rice and stuff like that. But hopefully, you know, give you guys some ideas of other things you can store and add to your prepper pantry. You know, did I miss something? Is there something that's one of your go-to staples that you have in your pantry that we didn't cover here? Drop it in the comments section below. You know, let's help each other prep smarter. You know, we're all human, we can't think of everything. We're here to learn from each other. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. That really, you know, subscribing, commenting on our videos really helps us with the YouTube algorithm. So thank you for watching, and that's going to be it today for Vegas Backyard Prepper.